years. Since he's holding my father, I can guess he's just about 30 years old. Now, as you can see, there's not a lot of hair left on his head. He started losing hair early in his 20s and he wasn't on testosterone like me, that's for sure. That's the genetics I'm dealt with in my family, and he wasn't the only one. What's up folks, it's Uranus, we're in Brussels, welcome to another video. Today we'll be talking about hair loss and how I managed to destroy my perfect hairline, going from this to this in just a matter of a couple of years. Looking back now, I can tell you guys exactly what my mistakes were and where and when my hair started to go downhill. Of course, androgen and DHT are going to play a very important role in this video, and just so you have a little bit of a background, before the age of 26 years old, I basically had never had a significant amount of androgenic hormones into my body. I was born with pituitary damage, and because of that my body never produced any testosterone, and because of that I never had any DHT. So my hair was never exposed to DHT until I was the age of 26 and I started hormonal replacement therapy, or HRT. Before that, basically I still had hair on my freaking forehead. Now I'm 100% transparent. I made many mistakes in the past, and so now you can learn from them. So this story is all going to be about genetics, SARMS, TRT, antibiotics, and their effect on my hairline. Now, it's quite a personal topic because hair loss is quite important for men. When we lose our hair, we take it right into the guts, and it's quite difficult to talk about because it has quite an impact on your confidence as a man. Alright, c'est parti. There are different forms of alopecia or forms of hair loss in men. We can lose our hair because of infections, because of diseases like autoimmune diseases, because of trauma or emotional events, because of gut issues, because of malnutrition or infections or medications, and so on. Now, all of what I just said probably represents less than 1% of hair loss in men. Then there's the major one, and it's androgenic alopecia or male pattern baldness. This is a main culprit, and 99% of us men should look no further than our precious testosterone being converted into DHT. It is by far the most common cause of male pattern baldness or hair loss in men, and it only gets worse by aging. Now, male pattern baldness is all about one, hormones, and two, genetics. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into this subject. So first of all, your scalp and your hair follicles have what is called androgen receptors. These fuckers are like magnets where your free androgens are going to bind to. Free androgens like free testosterone and DHT, for example. DHT here is the biggest problem because over time DHT or dihydrotestosterone will cause your hair follicles to miniaturize, and over time they get thinner and weaker. DHT binds to the receptors and attacks the follicles, and over time your hair is receding, mostly in an M shape because those are the areas sensible to DHT. It's like in the front, here and here in an M shape, and then at the freaking crown. The ones in the back and on the sides are way less sensible to DHT, and that's why when you're doing a hair transplant, they're actually taking hairs from these regions because there is way less chance you lose your hair there because they are less sensible to DHT. Now, over time, your hair follicles can become more sensible to that DHT, and that's why as you age, well, there's a little bit more chance that you're gonna have to wear a hat outside in the winter as you age. So that was the hormonal part. It's all about DHT. Now the second part is genetics. Look at this picture of my grandfather right here. Since he's holding my father, I can guess he's just about 30 years old. Now, as you can see, there's not a lot of hair left on his head. He started losing hair early in his 20s, and he wasn't on testosterone like me, that's for sure. That's the genetics I'm dealt with in my family, and he wasn't the only one with that kind of hair in his 20s or early 30s. Genetically, some people have hair follicles that are more sensitive to DHT, and they start losing their hair much earlier than other people. And then you have other people, other outliners, like Ronald Reagan, who still had a full head of hair in his freaking 70s, or bodybuilders like Jay Cutler that started probably taking steroids in his teens, and he's now in his 50s and he still has a full head of hair because genetically they have hair follicles that are less prone to being attacked by DHT. They are less sensible to that hormone. I just compared Ronald Reagan and Jay Cutler in the same sentence, did I? Anyway, I never paid too much attention to that because I was like a freaking castrati in my mid-20s. I literally still had hair growing on my freaking forehead when I was 25 or 26 years old. That's typically a hair growth pattern that you only see on children. I still needed to go through puberty fully at the age of 26, and I started my transformation into adulthood when someone injected a needle full of testosterone into my right butt cheek at high speed in the changing rooms of a freaking gym. I already made a couple of videos about that topic. Then I went through all of the medical shit. They diagnosed me with a malfunctioning pituitary gland and they put me on treatment. So before that, I had total testosterone levels that were about 80 nanograms per deciliter, and so in consequence, I basically had zero DHT into my body. I never had any facial hair and I didn't have any body hair at all. So that hair that you see right there had never been attacked by any freaking androgens, or at least not a significant amount. The first thing I noticed was like a month or two after starting treatment, I started to see the very first gray hairs on my head. Before that, I had never seen not even one single gray hair on my head. So the androgens, it can't be a coincidence, the androgens must have activated something. Other than that, hair-wise, I still had exactly the same density and the great hairline that I had, and that continued for the first 2.5 years of my treatment. I finally had testosterone into my body and my transformation was going really well and my hair looked great. The very important thing is back in those days, for the first 2.5 years, I was on HCG monotherapy. Basically, that product allows for your testicles to produce your own testosterone, and my total testosterone levels were good, between 8 or 900 nanograms per deciliter, but my free testosterone levels were just okay, and free testosterone is super important. After 2.5 years, I switched endocrinologist, and the new endocrinologist switched me from HCG to TRT. Now on TRT, my total testosterone levels got a little bit higher, from 8,900 to 1,000, 1,100, nothing too dramatic, but my free testosterone is now more than double the reference range. It turns out I'm a really high responder to TRT. Now, more free testosterone means also more conversion from testosterone to DHT, because that free testosterone is biologically available through your body to be converted to the 5-alpha reductase process. Anyway, I had a lot more DHT in my body from that point on. The second thing I noticed must have been in 2018, just about 1 year after I started TRT, and that was that the texture of my hair was changing from flat to curly. It was more difficult to put shape into them, and the texture was just changing, and it would often end up looking like this. What was happening in reality is that process of miniaturization had begun, and the hairs were becoming more thinner, and that's why they were curling more and more. I still had great density, don't get me wrong, look at this picture now. Of course, I'm high at a New Year's party, but it doesn't matter. Look at the hair, it was still pretty much perfect, great density, but the texture had started to change. Now, I started this process with a shitload of hairs too, but that process of miniaturization had for sure begun. Why? Because I have shit hair genetics in the family, and because I was on supra-physiological levels of DHT into my scalp. But then something happened at the end of that year that would change the course of my hair forever. It would never be the same again afterwards because of an avalanche of stupid mistakes and reactions on my part. Firstly, I injured myself in the gym really badly. I injured one of my fingers. As you can see on this picture, now it doesn't look like it, but on the other side of that picture, I can't show you because of the gore, but on the other side, there's not much left of that finger. I needed emergency surgery to reconstruct that finger and to keep, well, 10 fingers on my freaking hands. It exploded between 2 dumbbells. Not going to go into details right now. So on that picture, I'm in the ER and I realized I'm pretty much fucked. That's pretty much the last picture I have of me where my hair still looks great and like I had always known it. Now, because of the injury and the surgeries and so on, the doctors put me on a truckload of amoxicillin, antibiotics and ibuprofen anti-inflammatory. Now, I had never really taken antibiotics prior to that in my life. I had never been on antibiotics before. When I was a kid, even when I was sick, my mother would make me lemon tea and give me a spoon of honey and put me in the bed. You know, the family is mostly against antibiotics. So back then, I had never taken that shit before. And it was literally a shock to my body when I started taking all of those medications, especially on my digestive system. And so I started shedding hairs like crazy. I remember I was in the bathroom of the hospital before going for a follow-up visit, and I was just going through my hairs with my wet hands, and I had just like maybe 100 hairs on my wet hands just from going through my hairs a couple of times. Back then it was really crazy and scary, of course, because I started shedding hairs like crazy because of the medications that they give me. Of course, back in those days I was more worried about keeping all of my fingers on my hand than my hair. I still didn't pay that much attention to it, even though I had hundreds of hair loss per day. So that's factor number one. Now, number two of the stupid mistakes I did following that injury, I couldn't train and I was losing a lot of muscles, and mentally I couldn't deal with my injury. You know, suddenly I was an active person, working out 6 times per week and so on, going left and right, and suddenly I was just home jerking off and playing Red Dead Redemption 2. And on my mind, I couldn't deal with my injury back then. And so I decided to order SARMS. Now, what happens when you take SARMS on top of TRT? Well, the one I was taking, ostarine, will completely destroy your SHBG or sex hormone binding globulin. Like, we're talking a decrease into single digits. Without that binding mechanism, you have a lot more free androgens and free testosterone floating around in your body, and so you have a lot more conversion into DHT. So on top of shit family hair genetics, I had supraphysiological levels of the hormone that is responsible for freaking hair loss, and that's not going to be any good. And that's exactly at that time that my hair really started to go downhill. So the injury and then the stupidity of taking the SARMs. This picture was taken like 2 months after the injury and after the surgeries and so on. I was on ostarine, and it doesn't look like that much like that, but I had lost a truckload of density on my hair. Of course, I look like a dick too on that picture, but that's not what we're here to talk about, right? This picture is just about 6 months later. That's where I started to buzz them a little bit shorter, because it just wasn't the same. It wasn't like before. This is a year after the injury. I still had a decent amount of hair on my head, but clearly it wasn't the same as before. I still had a good amount of hair on my head, but it was time to take action, because that DHT Reaper was coming for the rest of my freaking hair. Now, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes it takes a little bit more time before the information reaches the central point up here. You know, I knew there was a problem, but I denied it for a long time. As a man, sometimes it takes a little bit of time before you can actually accept the information that is coming at you. So right at this time, I realized something was going on and I needed to take action right now, or I was going to look like my grandfather really soon. Well, I hit another shitstorm in my life. Like, I lost somebody very close to me in tragic conditions, and the world fucking ended outside because of C-19. I took SARMS again, and by the end of a very first lockdown here in Belgium, my hair was looking like a really old toilet brush that needed to be replaced ASAP. Horrible and stupid. I was on LGD 4033 and I couldn't even train properly because the gyms were closed here for like freaking 3, 4 or 5 months. I don't even remember, you know. This is what my scalp looked like wet. This is what my hair looked like wet. Now the picture is looking a little bit funny because I had to cut away half a naked Czech woman next to me, you know. Sorry, the focus is on my hair this time and not on my girlfriend's ass. Now looking at that picture, you might be thinking, okay, the next step is to cut that hair completely down, just buzz it, you're done. And that's what I was thinking too at that time. But as you can see right now in front of you, I still have a good bit amount of hair left on my head. I actually almost have a full head of hair, and as you've been seeing on my videos for the past 2 years, this is approximately when I started making videos, and this is approximately now. My hair hasn't receded or evolved negatively that much in the past years. I managed that by being on quite a heavy hair loss prevention protocol of a mix of orals and topicals, and my hair loss has gotten really stable and hasn't evolved badly in the past freaking years. But of course, I have to accept that my hairs will never look like what they did before. And at some point, I really thought it was going to get bad and I was going to have to buzz it off. I got right to the zone when there is no backing down, where you can't come back anymore. But I managed to stop the hair loss and stop the DHT Reaper from fucking the rest of my hair over. Now, of course, I acted exactly at the right time. If you're starting to look like my grandfather did at age 30, it's going to be really difficult to reach significant results. Now, I really wonder what would have happened if I had my normal puberty and a normal hormonal production. If I started producing testosterone at 13 or 14 years old, like normal kids, I probably would already be bald right now. Like some of my uncles had to shave their head in their 30s because of that DHT, and genetically we're not so prone to having a good head of hair. So I really wonder what would have happened if I was actually a normal person. Then again, I'm never going to be normal, but anyway, guys, if you have bad genetics and you're scared about hair loss, don't do SARMS. And if you have to do TRT, be on a conservative dosage, because otherwise that DHT Reaper is coming for your freaking hair. Now, I'm gonna make an entire video series about my hair loss, and especially about how I got my hair freaking back to a level where I'm actually not scared of looking at any pictures or whatsoever. Now, in the meantime, thank you for watching this story, guys. It was quite a personal one, but I'm happy to make these videos for you. Now, kindly do the YouTube things. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you also suffer from hair loss and what your hair loss protocol, your hair loss defense protocol is. Subscribe to my channel, like the video, and I'll catch you on the next one. Uranus out.